Dr. Faheem Younus is an adjunct faculty for religion and history at the community colleges of Baltimore County. He also blogs at muslimamerican.com. It's great to speak with you. I want to talk about the article you wrote, which talks about this question we've been seeing about President Barack Obama's faith. And, you know, since the beginning of the campaign, there were these debates over something that it's funny to debate when there doesn't seem to really be any question of it, which is the president Muslim? And we even saw a poll recently done among Republican primary voters in Mississippi and Alabama, which asked the question, and incredibly, a lot of people believe the president is Muslim. Now, you are actually saying this is not even a question that we should be asking. Is that correct?
Absolutely, David. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm personally saying this is an absurd question to begin with. When this question first popped up in 2008, and I felt like writing about it, and then I thought, hey, this is an absurd question. It's going to go away on its own because who cares? Our Constitution does not care what religion you are from. In fact, it protects that. Our oath for president is a faith-neutral oath. So I think that's a wrong question to ask. In fact, the right question to ask would be, what if you were a Muslim? What if you're a Muslim? And this is exactly what Colin Powell said in 2008 in his Meet the Press interview, that Muslims, if you look at it, they are serving in the army just like any other demographic in this country. They have given up their lives for this country. In fact, hundreds of Muslims, people dispute the number, but they perished in 9/11 just like other 3,000 of our countrymen. So why is there a special treatment here?
No question. You know, and I agree with you. I agree with you about everything you said. Where I disagree is that it's an invalid question for pollsters to be asking, because to me, I think it contextualizes in a very important way who is voting in the Republican primary. And if you were to say to me, listen, you know, any question, let's say whether a candidate or not is married really shouldn't be important, whether people are voting for him or not. However, if we have an interesting question about marriage on there, do you think that you are less likely to vote for a candidate because they are single? It shouldn't matter, but it does to voters, and I want to know about that. I think it's important context.
I think that would make sense in 2008, but the president has answered the question repeatedly. They said his father was a Muslim. He said, no, my father was an atheist. They said, you went to a Muslim school for 2 years. He said, I went to a Catholic school for 2 years as well. They said that you are a born Muslim. He said, I chose Christianity as my faith. So I think at some stage you have to take people's word, or it's almost, to me, it looks like no amount of data is enough. Like he released his long form birth certificate, and still people are saying he was probably born overseas. Now that's a kind of mindset
I think we're having we may be having a semantic disagreement here, because I want to be clear. I agree with you. It's nobody should think that the president is a Muslim. I completely agree with you. He has proven that, and I hesitate to even use that term because it really puts the onus on him to prove something which we should just accept. But you seem to take issue with the pollsters asking the question. The reason people believe this has nothing to do with pollsters. It has to do with a number of other issues, including the birther movement, conservative media, etc. But I don't think that pollsters asking the question is the root of this problem.
No, you're right. And you know, again, in a free society, people can ask anything, David. But the point then is, I think it's either a trick or, you know, because it's either a trick or it's a distraction, because it doesn't serve a purpose. It's going back to a conversation that's 4 years old, that has been dead in people's mind from a scientific standpoint. It will only reinforce a certain perception. It has nothing to do with reality. So I fail to understand how it adds anything to the discourse. I think that is where we are all always looking for, you know, in a data-driven world, as a scientist, as a media personality, you know, you don't want to overload yourself with data. You need to have relevant data, and I think this just adds to the clutter.
I think here's where we differ. I think everything, the criticism you have just made, I would apply to media reporting of this issue. However, I would argue that in this case, I think it was the Pew Research Center who did this poll, and if it's not, I apologize, it may have been a different one. They are merely reflecting the end result of the media coverage about the president's faith. I don't think that, I think your criticism is a brilliant one. I just think it's not of the pollsters asking a question which simply looks to tell us what does this society look like. I think it's a criticism of the media coverage of this issue.
Yes and no. And again, I think, David, to move the discourse forward wouldn't be, we all know the answer to that question. Anytime you ask that question, anywhere from 10 to 50% of the people where you are, based on your demographics, are going to say yes to that. We already know the answer. We already know the outcome. I really think it would be fascinating to see how far as a country we have come in 4 years on that question which Colin Powell raised as to, so what? What if he is a Muslim? Do you care? So if we started asking a question, do you care if your president is a Muslim? I think that would be a phenomenal number. That would be a phenomenal piece of information that we all could use and see how far we have come as a country. And I'm basically saying that, as I keep repeating, in a free society, people can say anything, they can ask anything.
Right. Well, there we're getting really into the key issue, right? And the Colin Powell quote is the brilliant one, which is, are people, which is something we look at in exit polls, and we saw in Mississippi and Alabama. Exactly. A lot of people said the religion of the candidate was very important or somewhat important to them. And to me, that's a significant problem, because even though in theory there's separation of church and state, we clearly don't really have that, because the candidate's religion is such an important piece of who they vote for.
And that's why exactly I keep repeating, we need to separate the church and the candidate, not church and state. It's almost like where the candidates are now using religion as a card, as a entry point. Like I always say that the Gore-Lieberman ticket won more than 500,000 votes than the Bush-Cheney ticket, not because Lieberman was Jewish, but despite Lieberman's religion. That is what America is, that you win an election despite your faith, not because of your faith.
No question about it. I think that on that end point, I think we can absolutely agree. We've been speaking with Dr. Faheem Younus. He is an adjunct faculty for religion and history at the community colleges of Baltimore County. You can check out his blog at muslimamerican.com. Pleasure to speak with you today.
Same here, David. Thank you very much for having me.